Welcome to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast with Darren Mitchell. If you're a sales leader looking to take your leadership to a whole new level, then this is the podcast for you. We'll be exploring tips, techniques, and strategies to help you take your leadership to the exceptional level and allow you to enjoy more money, more meaning, and better sales results. Welcome to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast, and a very, very special welcome to Kelly Resendez, all the way from California in the US. I think it's California. Did I get that right?
Yes, you got it.
Awesome. Hey, thank you for joining. And just before we press record, I had to thank you, and I'll thank you publicly for your flexibility, because we were originally going to do this tomorrow, but circumstances have changed. So we brought this forward 24 hours. So it's a great opportunity to have a chat with you. So looking forward to this conversation. For the people listening, Kelly, you are can I say the extended title, or just keep it as EVP?
Whatever you'd like.
All right. So the people who love acronyms, EVP of Talent Development and Growth at a company called GoodLeap, which is US's or America's #1 point of sale platform for sustainable home solutions. But also, you are the founder of GoBundance Women, which is a mastermind for women. And love to delve into this, because we're going to talk about mindset, maybe a little bit of sales. And as you just dropped before we press record, you have been in the top 1% of sales in the mortgage industry in the States for a number of years. So before we jump into specific topics, love to get some background on you and how you found yourself to be the EVP of Talent Development and Growth, but also what sort of prompted you to start GoBundance?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I'll be honest, I probably was a kid that, some kids were playing house and I was playing boss at an early age. There was definitely no one that would have argued with the fact that I was a little bossy and definitely did not lack confidence. So, grateful, had two entrepreneur parents, grew up in a small town that really, didn't ever put any limitations on what I could achieve. And that took me into, a place in the mortgage industry at a really early age. So grateful for that part of my journey, and was in the mortgage industry for many years before I got into executive leadership, and have been here now at GoodLeap for about 13 years. And I absolutely love it. We're a super world positive company that's really focused on making the world a more sustainable place. So we finance solar home improvement projects that really just, make sure that we're reducing carbon and helping homeowners save money at the same time.
Nice.
So I really, one of the things that I would tell you that when I joined the company is that I already knew that I had just a bigger mission. And my mission is truly just to, kind of rewrite the laws of leadership, especially with women.
Mm-hmm.
I believe we can have it all, and that we can create a lot of ands. So while I've been here at the company, I've written a couple books. I'm a public speaker as well. And also just have found this amazing mastermind community as well about 5 years ago. And for me, it really came from a place of loneliness. I'll be honest, when you are a high achiever, when you're somebody that is constantly, I would say loves a lot of variety in your life and is ambitious always, there's no end to what we focus on. And it was just one of those things that I have amazing friends, I have amazing people in my life, but I wanted to have more community within, the female leadership space. And I went out there, tried to find it a little bit, couldn't. And so, of course, just created, with a couple other co-founders, this organization. There was also a men's organization, GoBundance Men, that was already in existence. So it was just a perfect, way that we could partner with them and starting this. And it's been amazing being able to, connect with women all over the world that are ambitious and really just want a community to help push them to the next level.
Fantastic. Love it. There's a lot of key things you touched on there, which I could delve into. One of the things that you did talk about was loneliness and being in executive leadership as a female. Having been in corporate myself in leadership positions, I do know that there's the female representation at the senior levels is still completely not where it should be. And there's probably a lot of reasons for that. But when you talk about executive leadership and being lonely? Because I know John Maxwell often talks about the fact that in senior leadership, it can be lonely at the top. And sometimes it's not because there's nobody to talk to. There's a lot of less competition, but there's
Yeah.
also fewer people to perhaps soundboard off. What was your, I guess, key lesson through that process where you were in executive leadership positions as a female who had entrepreneurial flair? And when you talk about the loneliness, can you just explore that a little bit more? Because I'm sure there's lots of people listening to this
Yeah.
who are in positions who want to do more or believe they're more capable, but maybe they're holding themselves back for
Yeah.
whatever reason. Maybe there's a lower representation of females, and that could be a catalyst.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's a multifaceted challenge that we're facing. It's not, some people might say, well, it's just harder for women to get ahead. I disagree. I think what the road is it's more challenging to be able to balance the things that we feel like we want to balance.
Mm,
I wanted to be there for my kids. I wanted to be at the soccer games. I wanted to, really still, nurture that creative side of who I am. And so some of the core lessons that I really learned along the way, number one is worthiness is our birthright.
yeah.
There are a lot of women, men too, that really haven't sank into that. They're
Mm,
still trying to prove or wait for someone else to tell them. And I love when Mel Robbins, I love one of her episodes where she was just like, nobody's coming. Like, no, you're not going to be the star on American Idol, right? No one's just going to find you because you're talented. You have to advocate for your own, career and whatnot. And
mm,
so really sinking into this worthiness and then constantly be developing your skills simultaneously.
yeah.
So, I look at confidence and worthiness as the two things that you really need in addition to emotional intelligence as a leader. But
Yeah.
confidence is something we build by doing things outside of our comfort zone, where worthiness is just, why not? Why
Yeah.
not me? And
Yeah.
so really just sinking into that. The second thing that I would tell you that another part that we have challenges with is really asking for help and
Mm,
articulating what you need. And so if you want to get to this next level, but you're worried about the kids or you're worried about how you're going to do it all, you need to advocate for that with your partner and say, you know what, if we're both working, we need to split things 50-50. And there's going to be differences still. One of
mm.
my favorite analogies I heard a pastor use years ago where he said, women are like a bowl of spaghetti. Like every noodle's touching. You touch one, it affects everything. We're thinking about stuff all the time. The kid's got to go to the dentist. I've got a board meeting. I've got this. I've got that. Where men are more like waffles, where they like compartmentalize. It's like nothing touches. I'm at work. Who cares about the kids? Like, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
Whether that's true or not, I love that analogy because it has been a little true, but we do need to advocate for help. And we
Mm,
need to be able to even ask our leaders, like, hey, I have career aspirations. I need help. Like, here's what I'm thinking. And I'm very blessed. Like, the CEO and founder of our company, Hayes Barnard, was raised by a single mom. So he knew me coming in. I'm a single mom. Here's what I
yeah.
need to, here's what my life looks like. And he
Yeah.
knew he was going to get the most value out of me, no matter what that looked like. And
Yeah.
so you also need to make sure that you find the right conscious leader that's dedicated to really, holding women up to that level. So I would
Mm,
say those few things are the greatest lessons that I've learned. But on top of that, the last piece, which is something that we know is one of the top reasons why entrepreneurs and executives, struggle is burnout. And
yeah.
that's through this, lack of self-care, really lack of really ensuring that their priorities are on point. And I'm somebody that believes you got to create a vision for how you want to feel, make sure that it's in alignment with your priorities, then go out and create your life and your career and your goals, et cetera, rather than start with your goals and not really ever focus on how you want to feel. I'm a big energy person,
Hmm.
and so my life is about keeping my emotional and physical well-being on point so
Yeah.
that I do have the energy to be able to give as much as I do.
And part of that's going to be knowing where you're going to be at your most energetic and less energetic throughout the
Yes.
day, and then
Yes.
structuring your programming around that.
Yeah. And really, I kind of call it an abundance audit, is
Yeah.
recognizing that throughout the day, if I've got to hop on a compliance meeting, no offense, I'm going to be a little depleted afterwards. Like, I might need to have a really great conversation to get my energy level back.
Hang
And
on, Kelly.
most people just deplete themselves all day because they don't spend any time doing things that they love.
So, Kelly, are you saying that compliance meetings are not exciting?
I would say absolutely not. So,
It's true. It is true. Um, One of the things you were talking about there, and I get the whole thing around energy and how important it is. And I remember back to the days when I was in corporate, there were a number of people who almost wore like a badge of honor the fact that they were stuck at their desks, they worked really long hours,
ah,
and even worse than that, they didn't take any annual leave. And so they
yeah,
felt as if, well, the company's going to completely implode if I'm not here. So I better stay here because I'm the great soldier for the business. Forgetting the fact that, you know what, they were um, replaceable at a moment's notice, and in
yeah.
some cases that did happen. Um,
Yeah, and when you look at that, because it's so common,
mm,
when you really wake up to this idea that all of us have been kind of pre-programmed by our parents and the environment in which we grew up in,
yeah,
it's one of the greatest abundance blocks that people have, is this idea that that's the only way to be successful or worthy, is by just telling everyone how hard you work and just really just being able to do that. It's
yeah,
such a distraction technique from
yeah,
being in the present moment that you do have to take a step back. If you find yourself in that place, really just start to think about like the why. If significance is the reason, it's
mm,
not going to sustain you. One day that's going to go away. And you
yeah,
don't want to wait until your partner leaves, your kids leave for college, your parent passes away, or any of those things to get that wake up call. You want
yeah,
to make a decision now, like, really, what are my priorities? And
mm,
it is, I mean, as you know, and we've all heard this, like, no one remembers us for what we do. They remember us for how we are, and
yeah.
those conversations and those, the ways that we're compassionate or empathetic to the people that we work with.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so true. And as you were talking, and particularly with two entrepreneurial parents, I'm assuming, and maybe it's a dangerous thing to assume, but I'm assuming you didn't have necessarily I guess, the conditioning that a lot of people would have, that
Yeah.
9 to 5 type stuff. So as entrepreneurs, you work when you need to work, which means you have some
Yep.
flexibility around your schedule. Even from my perspective, I've been nearly 9 years out of the corporate space, and even now I still have every now and then this little guilt trip that if I'm doing something such as taking my wife out for lunch on a Thursday
Yeah.
afternoon, right, and not quote unquote working, I shouldn't be doing that. And it's interesting that how sometimes we attach worthiness and significance to, I guess, the environment we've been in, and therefore
Yes.
what we make that mean for ourselves. So I'm even grappling with it now today,
Yeah.
and it's been 9 years.
Yeah, well, and it's one of those things that you have to see how strong it is. Like,
Mm,
our subconscious mind is so strong, and
yeah.
that productivity, like, if we're not productive, then we're not, we aren't significant or we're not contributing, but it's such a balance that you
Mm,
just want to have the right recipe. And I'm all for being productive. There's a lot that I do, but there's more that I want to just be. I
yes.
want to be present. I want to enjoy my time with my sweetheart. I want to make sure that, I have time for the kids, and I travel and I do the things that I really love to do, because that's really where fulfillment comes from. But our brain, I mean, and that's the one thing that I would say, that if you want to be super successful, when you learn how to harness your brain
Yeah.
instead of your brain using you, you will get to the next level. And
Yeah.
that dopamine rush of like accomplishment is, I mean, it's very habit forming.
Mm,
And so you've got to rewire a little bit so that you can enjoy those peaceful moments as much as you enjoy the productive moments.
absolutely. Absolutely. It's well said. Back to when you were the top 1% in the mortgage industry, because you talked about worthiness being our birthright and how many people often attach their worthiness to how others see them, and maybe attach
Yeah.
to such as a label of, the top 1% person or a top performer or EVP, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of the titles that come with that. what was some of the challenges in turn, and just talk about the worthiness process or
Yeah.
journey you've been on, because I'm assuming that you'd have to have done a lot of things outside of your comfort zone to be in the top 1%, because that's a very small group and a very
Yes.
elite group. And I say elite very respectfully. Um, you can't be in that and sustain that over a period of time if you didn't have a really solid belief in yourself and a level of
Right.
self-worthiness, right? So just talk about that, because that, I know there are people listening to this who, for whatever reason, are attaching their success to a title or the next opportunity
Yeah.
within their business. Um, what sort of process did you go through that helped you, I guess, self-actualize, if you like, to the point where there was no externalized, I guess, validation that you were
Yeah.
requiring in order to be the
Absolutely.
successful person?
Absolutely. Well, the first thing that I would say is that when I started in the mortgage industry, I was severely significance driven. And it was, one of the most competitive industries. And this was, back in the late 90s. And what I would tell you is that, as I look back on who I was then, it was, I mean, we were pretty much, I mean, you're taken advantage of by your company because
Yeah.
they have leaderboards and these amazing event trips where they send
Yeah.
you all over the world and they're making sure that, you're getting all the accolades and whatnot. But what I would say for me, significance and worthiness are a little bit different.
Okay.
So worthiness is more just, you feel like you should be successful, where significance is, I feel successful through the eyes of other people. And
Yeah.
so it's important to kind of, look at those two things separately because it can be it can be a great credibility builder.
Mm.
When you are in the top 1%, a lot of us, as you're in sales, you have to be able to build authority. People build, they're going to build authority faster through your rankings. And so there is value in definitely being on the higher side. But I would tell you, when you're really driven by your deeper why, that's where magic happens. And
Yeah.
so for myself, it probably took about 6 years being a top producer before I had my awakening. And that came through, my mom, who was an amazing entrepreneur and just this awesome, woman, got diagnosed with dementia at a super early age.
Right.
And so that really was kind of my awakening to say, like, what am I doing this for? I don't want to
Yeah.
be on the same path to burnout that she was.
Yeah.
She didn't sleep at night. She was constantly, thinking about everything that she needed to do. And she never got to enjoy retirement. She was forced to retire. And so that's really where my big shift came, was like, okay, I'm letting go of all of it. Like, I literally told my company, do not publish my name anymore. I want to be like the incognito person that just
Ah,
helps people.
undercover.
Yep. And I was just undercover. And I stayed that way for basically the next, 7 years of my mortgage career. And I
Okay.
really gave back to other originators as well. And
Yeah.
I shifted the way that I did things. So the one thing I would tell you, like for myself and how I got where I was, is that I really looked at my return on investment on my time. And what I watched other people do was meet with one person at a time. And so I started to host events early on. I'm like,
Okay.
I don't want to go meet with one real estate agent at a time. I'm going to put 30 of them in the same room. I'm going to put 100 of them in the same room.
Yeah.
And not only did it kind of build credibility and they saw me as an authority figure, but it also just, maximized the amount of time that I had. And so with that, confidence wasn't a challenge for me. It
Mhm.
just, that's not one of the ways that I sabotaged myself. I was a perfectionist or people pleaser. So I was just constantly taking care of what other people needed
Yeah.
rather than taking care of myself.
In that process, you were I guess that was the early stages of your mastermind, really, because you're putting
Yeah,
groups together
absolutely.
and selling, I guess, influencing in a group sense. And I'm sure would have been a lot of competitors in those rooms that wanted to be the top real estate agent in the region. So
Yeah,
the fact that they've got competitors in the room and you're facilitating that would have elevated, I guess, your significance, at least in the eyes of those people.
yes, it
And
absolutely did.
So then what changed then for you in relation to your definition of success? So starting out, you said that you were very
Yeah.
competitive and you had to go through stuff, but then it changed, and maybe it was the catalyst that your mum getting diagnosed with early stage dementia, which is a terrible thing to have to go through. But how big did your definition of success change?
It completely changed overnight. And
Overnight.
it's taken now 20 years. I still play with it every single day. So
Okay.
I went from being what I would say completely unconscious to being completely conscious. Like, oh my gosh, all these thoughts that I've been having, all of these patterns that I've been running, all of these, ways that I've been sabotaging myself physically, emotionally, I started to finally see them as separate from who I was.
Right.
And for the first time in my life, because I also had my daughter in 2003, like I could actually enjoy being in a moment. I had never done that before.
Mm.
And I don't know if anybody out there is listening where you're just constantly doing, doing, doing. It's like, what's next? What's next? What's next? And it was that hunt for significance and success where it really shifted to now, how do I make a bigger difference in the world? How do I help other people through the self-suffering? I had self-suffering. I had first world challenges. Like
Mm.
anything that I suffered with happened because of myself. It wasn't what was going on out there. And so success became for me, I love that idea of just doing what you love. That's just how simple it is. And then having the freedom to choose, just that combination of those two things, having the freedom to choose what you want to do. And you've got to understand, which it's hard to, in 2011, I left a thriving mortgage practice. Like everything was going fantastic to take a risk on a company that really wanted to get to the next level. So it
Yeah.
was almost like starting over and letting it
Yeah.
all go because I was so passionate. I was so rooted in my mindset of like everything always works out okay for me. I was able
Mm.
to really
Mm.
take that risk and make that career shift.
Which says to me that I guess the definition of success changed, obviously, and as you said, being more conscious, but the worthiness versus significance conversation also had a big impact because no longer were you saying that your worthiness, your significance, who you are in your identity
Yeah.
is you're not the number one or in the top 1%
Yeah.
mortgage brokers anymore. You
Yeah.
are you are who you are. You're Kelly, right?
Yeah.
And you're capable of doing anything. And there's a lot of people out there that hang on for dear life to,
Yeah.
I guess, their role or their company, thinking that
Yeah.
that's the answer, and they're miserable. They are
Well, the challenge
miserable.
is that we build lifestyles, right? So
Yeah,
we build lifestyles around the amount of money that we earn. And if you're in a top sales position,
yeah.
it's really challenging to go out there and earn at that level. The
Mm,
challenge is a lot of top salespeople haven't built wealth. They're too
yeah,
busy to build wealth. They
yeah.
just spend what they earn, even if it's $1 million a year or whatever. I don't know how you guys look at money in Australia, but it is what it is, and
Yeah.
it's like for many of us, it's really all for nothing because
Mm.
your lifestyle, the more you earn, the more you spend, and you aren't really getting any further in your life.
It's fascinating because you see, and I see it still in sales and certainly sales leaders, they want to get the prestige or the status that comes with the title. Sometimes they think they get the income that's consistent with the title as well, but that's not always the
Yeah,
case, particularly when you break it down into the responsibility they have. And they chase the material things. So they've got to have the latest BMW or the latest Porsche. And you're thinking, well, that's
yeah,
that's the significance that is attached to, I guess, my importance in this role versus saying, you know
yeah,
what? Who cares what you drive? I know
yeah,
sales leaders who drive 15, 20-year-old cars because they couldn't care less about what the car looks like. They're
yeah.
more interested in what value they're bringing to their team and what value they're bringing to the marketplace. So it's a
Well,
complete.
there's such a big difference between like, I like having those things because I really love them myself,
Yeah.
and I have it because I need other people to see it. And
Mm.
people, there's that fine line because I still love a good car. I still love a great, fast car, Darren. So it's one of those things that you need to be in that place of just true abundance, which is none of my worth, my success, or anything is
Yeah.
tied to anything external. It's
No.
just not tied at all. It's just completely internal.
Which brings me to, I'd love to talk about GoBundance and get into some of
Yeah.
the mindset stuff. But you mentioned something also before, and I wrote a note. Um, you mentioned that a lot of people, a lot of executives, a lot of salespeople, a lot of sales leaders, and probably just well, also a lot of entrepreneurs focus a lot on doing the actions of doing. So I've
Mm.
got to be productive. We've got to be feeling as if we've got to be doing something, making phone calls, sending LinkedIn requests, doing podcasts, something to do.
Yeah.
Versus, okay, you need to do stuff in order to make something happen. But I talk to leaders all the time, and it sometimes creates a little bit of when if you I don't know if you've got a dog or not, but sometimes when I talk to my dog and she doesn't understand, she turns her head to the side and saying, "What are you talking about?" Right? So I often
Yeah.
have these experiences when I'm talking to leaders and I talk about their to-do list, and everybody's very good at what they've got to do.
Yeah.
But then I say, "Well, guys, what's actually on your to-be list for today?" And they look at me
Hmm.
as if I'm a complete alien, and it's
Yeah.
almost something that's very foreign. But I've come to believe through the coaching and mentoring that I've had that yeah, there's certain things you have to do, but what we're missing is a massive chunk that can lead to more sustainable success, and that is who do we need to be on a daily basis in order to help facilitate the things we
Yeah.
need to do? So, from your experience, and maybe it was the epiphany you had and the leap of faith you had back in 2011, what have you seen through your experience, the importance of the doing part versus the importance of the being part? And would you now, looking back, um, and the people you work with now, place more emphasis on one or the other, or they sort of have to be complementary?
Yeah. Well, absolutely. I think our outlook and the meaning that we assign to certain experiences is like the greatest superpower that we have as a leader. So who you're being for me is way more important. If I'm coaching a CEO or really just looking at, helping them grow, that's the first thing that I focus on is who they're
Mm,
being in the business because they're the ones that are really radiating what chances of massive success that they're going to have. So I do believe mindset is everything.
mm,
And mindset isn't just that set of beliefs, it's just the daily disciplines and practices that you have every single day as you're faced with different challenges and whatnot. And for myself, that's been a part of what I have shared, speaking, to real estate agents and mortgage professionals and business owners and whatnot now for 20 years.
yeah.
I always start with, you've got to start with the right mindset. You have to start with the right mindset, but most people don't even know the difference between, where being and doing comes from. They don't know the difference between left brain and right brain. And one of the, skills, or I guess you could say just areas that I really focused on in the last 20 years was on neuroscience and
Mm,
understanding how neuroscience plays into our success. And I think we live in a very left brain world.
we
And
do.
part of how to rewrite leadership is that we need a more whole brain approach,
Yeah.
which is, a lot more focused on creativity and global impact rather than just, hey, how do I win? There are a
Mm,
lot of companies that are winning in the revenue game and they're killing in the world positive game.
yeah.
And so I look at that and I truly believe that's where world positive leadership needs to come to play is that you need to find, if you're out there looking for a company and you're a top salesperson, but you're selling something that's killing other people physically or emotionally, like it's time to take a look at that. Like you're
Yeah.
never going to be at the highest levels of abundance if
No.
that's the way that you operate. So
Yeah.
part of that mindset, I would say is that, which I needed as well, was that I was the creator of my own success. So I needed to advocate what that looked like when I was looking at a next level role. Like, what did I
Mm,
really want in my life? Like, how did I see that? And then you've got to be open to infinite possibilities.
mm,
Like, I never would have thought, I mean, we were 100 employees or whatnot. I think we're over 1,200 today, like just an amazing organization. We just got an update yesterday. Our nonprofit, as of right now, 1 million people get clean water a day because
wow.
of what we've done. And it's
Amazing.
like, those are the kinds of things that, once you get really focused on, okay, who do I want to be?
Yeah.
Like you'll start to see like the world positive things that you could be doing are going to open up for you.
It's such a good way to look at it because I often talk to leaders about the fact that leadership is not about you, so stop making it about you.
Yeah.
It is about the legacy, and often talk about the leadership shadow and how deep that leadership shadow is. So how can you influence other people and do that in an ethical way? So when you're talking about abundance, you think, well, and think about sales in particular, there are so many opportunities out there and there are so many potential customers out there. You just need to be in the right headspace
Yeah,
first and foremost and be open to the possibilities
absolutely.
that come. But it's not about you and it's not about your product. So stop making it about you.
Yeah. And it's so challenging because again, we create lifestyles, right? We
That's
create
right.
lifestyles around the income that we make, and then we feel paralyzed that we can't go do anything different
Yeah.
because we've lost our freedom. And
Yeah.
that's what we have to take back. And that's what mindset really allows you to do is like, hey, step back into that powerful place of like, you're the creator. What can you go out there and do that's going to make a more positive impact in the world?
Which brings me to masterminds, because in order to do that, success is not an island and you can't be successful on your own. You're always going to have a powerful network behind you to help you become successful, which means you've got to be really careful on who you choose to surround yourself with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when you talked about, GoBundance, what was you mentioned before that you were looking for some, I guess, a tribe or a community to attach to, and there wasn't that much out there. So you started one yourself, which
Yeah.
is true entrepreneurial style. If you don't like what's something out there, you go and create it, which is fantastic. Just talk to me about the process of starting that and what sort of challenges did you have in the
Yeah.
beginning? Because
Absolutely.
and I'm not saying this is just for women, because
Yeah.
it's GoBundance Women, but the principles behind that I think have some great lessons in relation to associating yourself with great people who will lift you up, who are going to be not necessarily competitive, but they'll actually drive you in a competitive sense based on the fact that there's abundance out there. So everyone's, you know, focusing on everybody else's
Yeah.
success. What were some of the, I guess, the key challenges in establishing this? Because I'm sure that from a mindset perspective and some of the other things we'll talk about, there's lots of key lessons there for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I would say most of our role models from a leadership standpoint have actually kind of made us believe you can do it on your own because most of them are doing it on their own and a lot of times they're really miserable doing it. Like they're the ones that are working too much and significance driven and whatnot. And so one of the reasons why I wanted to do this as well was that, I believe we need an army of female leaders to emulate what's possible to the next generation,
Mm,
emulate that you can be a CEO or an executive and still be a great mom and be physically, fit and happy and all of these other things. So that was one of the big things. But, I would say the greatest challenges initially are really just breaking through that to people that believe they don't have more time. Because
mm,
that's really the one thing that a lot of executives and business leaders will say, well, I don't have any more time. And you're like, well, if you're in that position, that's exactly why you need a mastermind,
yeah,
because there's another way where time should be abundant. You should feel like you're more powerful to be able to invest time in every area of your life. And I think that female connection or that male connection for the men is super important because
yeah,
too many of us do feel like we're doing it alone.
mm,
And we give so much. That's the other challenge is that we give so much that most people are just running a little bit empty. So they feel like, oh my gosh, how am I going to come into this community? And it's like, what they don't realize is that the minute they start receiving, they start to open up even more.
yeah.
And that's really where the magic happens. It's like, well, hey, Darren, what are the greatest, connections or things that you really need in order to get you to the next level? Rather than you going to figure out them on your own, we've now got this whole community of people that have probably been there already. Oh, you need a virtual assistant, you need a fractional CFO, you need a course creator, you need this, you need that. Hey, I have all these things at my fingertips. And so once they start receiving, that's really, again, where they start to, really reap the benefits that, abundance is. It's that flow of giving and receiving. And I think too many people are just doing it on their own. So many lessons in building it. Number one, I believe most ambitious, successful people all have a side hustle today. So of course, that's what this has been for me and my two business partners, Mandy and Kathy, has been, we're doing this while we're doing these other things. So that's definitely been a challenge. How do we manage time? How do we, you're at the end of the day and now I'm, doing this or I'm doing that. And it definitely has had that's been a bit of a challenge. And then the second thing is just, how do we reach the masses? How do we ensure that more, women know about GoBundance? Because it's not, most of these people are going to work all day and then they're going to their kids' soccer game and then they're going home and making dinner and they're not thinking about this. So it's really just finding the right medium to be able to connect with them. It's probably been our greatest challenge.
Nice. And with that, a question that pops to mind in terms of which is a sales related question is how have you managed to scale it? How have you managed to attract? And what's the go to market strategy? Because the other part, I had a look at the website just before, and there's lots of different activities that people can get involved in. What at its core, what would you talk about as the core purpose for GoBundance? And as part of that, how do you make it attractive to women out there who feel that they, you know what, I'm burning the candle at both ends. There is only 24 hours in the day, and Kelly asked me to go invest some more time. I mean, really?
Yeah. Yeah. So the first thing that I would say to that question is just, you have to have a system for creating this life of abundance and financial freedom. And if you don't have a system, that's what we give to you. We really do have a solid model for being able to, create a playbook for your life, create that playbook for your business, and then have a group of women. You're put into a pod with 4 to 5 other successful women that are there to support you. They're there to challenge you.
Mm-hmm.
And they're there to celebrate with, because a lot of us, when you're a high achiever, you're not going to go tell your friends everything that you just did. It just doesn't work that way. Like for some of us, you kind of have to be that incognito, like we talked about before. You just don't tell anyone about your success. And so that's definitely the one thing that they can expect once they come in. But for us, like the greatest ways that we've driven membership, our number one is referrals. And when I look at even my mortgage business, that was my number one way that I got business as well. So our goal is that for every member, and if you're out there and you work by referral, if you don't have a goal for how many referrals you receive from everyone that you help, I would formalize that. That was, wrote a book in the mortgage industry called Foundation to Sustainable Success. That was the number one thing that I talked about, was like, if you don't have a system for referrals, like you are behind where you could be. And so to accelerate growth, systemizing referrals. So that's a big part of what we do. Another big part are attending events. So going to events, hosting events, that kind of thing, where we are in proximity to a lot more women has been, the next way. And then the third way, of course, is we've got GoBundance Men, who they've got over 1,000 people nationwide or worldwide, sorry. And so they also are a great source of introductions for us too.
Nice, because part of me is thinking, well, there's lots of different masterminds out there, and sometimes coming back to this worthiness question we talked about earlier, sometimes when there's an opportunity to at least explore a mastermind, one of the first things we think about is, oh my God, look at people like Kelly. I'm nowhere near Kelly's level, so I don't belong here. I can't possibly be in part of this program.
Yeah,
So,
and I just say throw that belief right out the window. I mean, that's a reality. Again, really sinking into worthiness, and then being in a community where the majority of the women are going to tell you they've struggled with imposter syndrome. They've struggled with some of these things. And so just knowing that, hey, just because you're struggling with something doesn't mean that's your identity. Those are just thoughts that your brain created accidentally. And
Yeah.
some of us are blessed to have been raised by parents that affirmed us. I probably got affirmed a little too much. I was probably a little too big for my pants growing up, right? But other people didn't get that, or maybe they just lacked that. I believe that it's just something that, when you surround yourself with women that are not competing, because
Yeah.
that is our right brain, our feminine power, when we're in our feminine energy, there's no competition.
No.
And so we give people permission to be authentic. And most
Yeah.
of us, we're ambitious, high achievers that, we want to make a big, difference in the world too. We just are approaching it from a different place.
Nice. And it's I mean, self-sabotage, as you talked about, is a huge issue for anybody, especially in sales and
Mm,
trying to grow, because of how we attach meaning, the external meaning, as to what success potentially represents for us. We just have to get over that, and that's the importance of surrounding yourself with good people, such as
yeah.
GoBundance Women, um, a coach, a mentor, a buddy, somebody
Yes.
who you can confide in, who gives you really meaningful feedback, but sometimes just is there as a support mechanism. Because the problem we have as human beings is we're kind of hardwired to the negative, aren't we? And you would have known this through
Oh,
your neuroscience
yeah.
studies and stuff, and all the
Yeah.
work you've done, that when we get negative feedback and we have negative thoughts, it's very hard to get rid of those. And if we don't get rid of them, they tend to compound, and eventually they become like a rut, and they're almost ingrained in terms of a belief system. So that's what we need to work on, that big time.
Absolutely. And here's what I'd say. Your brain's going to ruminate no matter what you do. You might as well force it to ruminate on something positive and gratitude, but you're going to have to teach it how to do it. And that's really an important part of what that is. I mean, nobody ever says, "Hey, I feel like I'm going to sabotage myself today. I really feel like procrastinating. I really feel like worrying too much about what other people think, or I really, worry about I just, you know what, today I'm just going to not focus at all and get totally distracted by social media and other things and just not do what I need to." And so what we have to recognize is that we have to, and this is a must, like if you want to, and this is just for the people that want to live life at the next level, which for
Yeah,
me, it's financial freedom.
yeah,
Like I want to live life at a level where I get to choose what I do and who I surround myself with, and not feel like I'm imprisoned by any expectations of other people or things like that. And so it's definitely really, really important that you get rooted in how you want to feel
mm,
first. Like really make that decision. How do
yeah,
I want to feel? And then determine your goals. What are those actionable steps that I can do day in and day out? And how do I start to see this sabotage as just the, unwanted visitor that's, coming into my life as separate, and just, hey, I get it. Like, I want to be distracted too, but we've got something to do. So we've got this time block and we're going to shut down our Google or our email now. I mean, I look at email. Too many people like think they're successful because they master their email box. Now, I love clearing out my email too. However, that's just your brain. You get a lot of dopamine from it. Well, did you get done with some of your big projects before? Like
yeah.
I had to record a compliance video before we came on this podcast. So it was like one of those things. It was the last thing that I wanted to do, but I knew I needed to get it done. And so that's exactly what I had to do, is just override the 5-year-old in me that was like, but I want to do what I want to do whenever I want to do it,
Yeah,
with just like, hey, nope,
yeah,
this is a time to be focused. We're going to feel fantastic once we get it done. And that's what most of us need to do, right? It's just tame the 5-year-old in us, the 9-year-old, the 10-year-old, the 20-year-old, whatever it is, tame that voice in our head that's not aligned with what your vision is.
yeah. And that's the thing, because sometimes you're going to have to do things that are uncomfortable or unpalatable or not things you want to do, but they are necessary stepping stones in order to get
Yes.
to not so much the destination, but to become the person that you want to be, that you say you want to
Yeah.
be, that you're committed to being. It's not all, what do they call it? It's not all lorikeets, rainbows, unicorns, and all that sort of
Yeah.
stuff. Right?
However, you can have a vision. Maybe your 1-year vision is different, but maybe your 3-year vision is, I'm going to spend 90% of my time doing what I love. And
Yeah.
that's what I did in my mortgage business. I just hired more and more and more assistants that took on all the things that I didn't love. So
Yeah.
I truly believe you can get to 90%. Now, 10%, you probably, as much as I like dislike it, I'm still going to unload my dishwasher. Let's be honest. I'm not going to pay somebody to come unload my dishwasher. Like that's just not going to happen, or put my clothes away, or do some of the other things like pay some bills. Like I still need to do those things. So
Mm.
I won't ever get to 100%, but I can certainly keep moving that needle to the place where I spend more time doing what I love
Yeah.
so that I do feel fantastic.
And that has a flow-on effect to mindset, attitude, behavior, and just well-being when you think about it, right? So if you're
Yeah.
doing stuff you love, you're in a good spot, you got all the things taken care of, you can be creative, still knowing you might have to do the 10% that you have to do. You're in a much better space. But also think about, and this comes back to the attractiveness. If you're doing that, how attractive that is now to
Yeah.
other people who say, "Hey, Kelly,
Yeah.
I want a piece of what you've got. How did you do that? Well, let
Absolutely.
me share this."
Yeah. And there's so many things. Like if you feel like you don't have enough time right now, that's already something that you can create a practice around. It's like
Mm,
most of us create that. Like we create time being scarce because of the way that
yeah,
we build our schedules or the way that we, operate. And so you got to take some of that power back. Like the number one thing I would say with time is that you have to put your self-care at the beginning of the list. As much as we have the greatest intentions to work out at the end of the day or do this at the end of the day, get it done first. Adopt a morning ritual. It will change your life and you'll already feel more powerful about time because you're going to be able to say, like, I put myself first. And that's a
yeah.
big, big step.
And for a lot of people, and particularly leaders who might be listening to this right now and they hear that, putting myself first, they might think, well, that's quite a selfish approach. It's actually not a selfish approach. It's actually being very selfless because the thing is, as a leader, as a person running a big organization, if you're not taking care of yourself, then you're in no position to take care of the team or the business. And
Yeah.
so nobody wants to see a leader that is completely burnt out because your team is and always will be a reflection of you. So if you're seeing people burnt out in your team, it's
Yeah.
probably an indication that you might have to
Yep.
make some changes.
Absolutely. And to be honest with you, when you're in sales or sales leadership, if you are emulating just this power that you are always like feeling joy and you manage your emotional triggers and you're just in this powerful state, it makes such an impact. It's just that's a value to the people that you're supporting in
Yeah.
teaching them some of those things too, because we know what core challenges that humans have. And it's work-life balance, it's, losing their joy every time something happens. Like there's a lot of this that you can pass on, and it also helps hold you accountable too. And I am grateful for that. That's why part of GoBundance Women, it holds me accountable,
Yeah.
right? I've got to
Yeah.
be there. I've got to be, supporting the organization, doing the things that I'm telling them that are important. It
Mm.
also creates that accountability for me.
It does, absolutely. Such an important point. And I think leaders can often lose sight of the fact that it's all about the team, it's all about the number, it's all about driving performance, it's all about the next account we're going to bring in, grabbing market share, but not necessarily considering, well, what is the cost that's being incurred in pursuit of that?
Yes.
And and Mel Robbins you referred to Mel Robbins before. She talks about this a lot, the fact that nobody's going to come to save you.
Yeah.
And if it's going to be possible, it's going to be up to you, and just get on with it. Just
Yeah.
get on with it, and
Absolutely.
manage yourself first. Look after yourself first.
For
So
sure.
so as we bring this to a close, Kelly, thinking about, I guess, the career you've had, the lessons you've learned, but also looking forward, what you're doing now, particularly with GoBundance. What does the future look like, for particularly women in leadership?
Yeah.
Just think about, just let's get the crystal ball out and think, okay, what does the next 2-3 years look like? Because in America in particular, this year we're already starting to see it. There's a lot of turmoil, political stuff that's going on, and
Hmm.
and looking at it from afar, I'm thinking I'm just fascinated by all this stuff. But from your perspective, I'm going to assume you're going to take an abundance mindset here.
Yep.
What are you looking forward to, or what are you
Yeah.
thinking about over the next couple of years for GoBundance and also for you, but also
Yeah.
people and women in leadership?
Yeah. Great question, Darren. So for me, part of what I want to help do is just kind of wake women up to understanding how powerful we are. You know, a lot of times we sit back and complain, but we have just as much power. I mean, in terms of like what we buy and what we watch and what we do and how, how our kids are, and really just, encouraging women to step into our influence and speak up more. And if things don't seem to be right, like try to do something about it instead of just sitting back and watching. And I think part of that is, as we watch the numbers for female leadership not increase at the rate in which they should, I think that we need as organizations to redefine a little bit what that means. I don't expect you to sacrifice your physical well-being, your children, any of those other things. And so I think it's going to be up to both companies and hopefully female leaders of those companies, and then female leaders just finally standing up and saying, you know what, I am going to continue to, get louder and move forward in my career and not let imposter syndrome or worthiness hold me back. And part of that's going to be through growing GoBundance Women and really just expanding. Hopefully I don't have any members in Australia, so I'd love to chat with some of you guys out there for sure, but really just being in that place where, beyond GoBundance, just getting louder about these rules for leadership need to be rewritten. Like we need to step into a world positive zone. Like I just don't believe what damage we're doing as big companies. Like, let's not celebrate them anymore. Like, especially like, don't buy the stock if they're making people, die or fat, unhappy, broke, any of these other things, distracted. Like, let's stop. Like, let's actually make the world a more positive place.
And that's where the power of community comes in, because often for
Yes,
change, you need community to actually
you
create
do.
wave that then
Yep,
creates the catalyst for that change.
for sure.
Awesome. So, hey, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. For people who want to connect with you and maybe know more about GoBundance, you mentioned there's no members yet
Yeah.
in Australia. We need to change that. Where's the best place for people to connect with you, Kelly, but also get more information about GoBundance?
Yeah, so I've got a 3-part series for you on overcoming self-sabotage.
Nice.
It's at www.downloadthepod.com. And I just share some of the strategies that I normally share within our community with you there on that 3-part series. And hopefully by the end of it, you'll want to book a call and we'll get started, and I'm sharing more information about GoBundance.
Nice. Awesome. And is it okay if I put your LinkedIn profile on the show notes as well? Because
Absolutely. And definitely connect with me on LinkedIn as well.
excellent.
Awesome.
So, Kelly, thank you so much again for your flexibility, because we're doing this 24 hours earlier than
Yeah.
we first anticipated.
Yes.
So, thank you so much. Really enjoyed the conversation, and best wishes to you and the GoBundance Women tribe and community as it continues to take over the world.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me, Darren.
Thank you for listening to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast. I trust the information in this episode has been helpful in your journey towards becoming exceptional. And remember, please take the time to rate the show, subscribe to the show so other people can find it. But also, if I can help you, jump on my calendar, go to leadwithdarren.com, and let's have a conversation about how I can help you along your journey to being exceptional.